Welcome to Today FM. News that moves us forward.
Hello, good morning to you. I'm Rachel Smalley with you through to 6:30 this morning. Now, US President Joe Biden says he's going to be holding a series of emergency summits with European leaders this week, but few believe really that anything is going to be agreed or will move the dial on the situation in Ukraine at the moment. US officials have told CNN that Russia launched hypersonic missiles against Ukraine last week. That was the first known use of such missiles in combat. Russia said it did so to destroy an ammunition warehouse in the west of the country. Meanwhile, many international analysts say that China is entering the fray, and this is potentially to prop up Russia economically and ease the burden of the international sanctions that are really crippling Russia. That will have implications, of course, for New Zealand. Our trade relationship with China is strong. We know that potentially if the Americans and NATO supporters call on New Zealand to impose sanctions, that would put us in a particularly difficult position. In a moment, we'll be speaking with Geoffrey Miller. He's an international analyst from the Democracy Project. I think he's with us now. Good morning to you, Geoffrey.
Good morning, Rachel, and congratulations on the launch of Today FM.
Thank you. A few little teething problems this morning, Geoffrey, but that's all good. As with all new things, we're working our way through it. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Look, the Americans say they have intelligence, Geoffrey, that China will support Russia and potentially economically. What could they offer to the Russians, do you think, and why?
Well, the rumour seems to be mainly logistical support. Certainly that seems to be in the US intelligence leak. Military rations, for example. But Russia has already asked, for drones and for, actual combat equipment of some kind. It's just really unclear to what extent China is willing to provide that kind of equipment. But it does seem likely that China will provide Russia with some assistance of some form. Certainly economic assistance is something that Russia badly needs at the moment, given just these crippling sanctions that the West has imposed.
Indeed.
So Joe Biden had a call with Xi Jinping at the weekend, and that seems to have been about giving Xi a warning about what will happen if China does support Russia in some form.
Is it in China's interests to see Putin succeed?
Well, I think it's in China's interest to not see Putin fail, really, in this. And that is the problem at the moment. It's a huge dilemma for Xi Jinping right now, in that the Russian invasion of Ukraine has not gone well. We've all seen how Russia has really struggled in this war. They're resorting now to this indiscriminate bombing of civilian targets, but they've failed to gain any territory to any large extent. And Putin seemed to think that the war would be over in a weekend or so, and they would have taken Ukraine. That certainly hasn't happened.
No.
So the problem for Xi is, and from the Chinese perspective, is that if Putin fails, that will trigger unrest in Russia, and these sanctions probably already will. And protests in Russia, potential of a revolution, regime change in Russia, and of the overthrow of the Putin regime, I think now is sort of 50-50. And if you're Xi Jinping over there in Beijing, seeing your best friend, and that's what Xi has described Putin as, being overthrown, it's hardly a good precedent for you. So, I think it's an existential threat for Xi Jinping's regime, whether Putin succeeds or fails in Ukraine. If he fails, then it's just terrible for Xi. It's a terrible look, given how close the two leaders are.
Geoffrey Miller, appreciate your time this morning. International analyst with the Democracy Project.
This is Today FM News.
Good morning, I'm Carly Flynn at 6. The lawyer for a Russian journalist who protested the country's invasion of Ukraine has spoken to Tova O'Brien of his client's ordeal. Marina Ozyanikova held a sign behind a news anchor telling viewers not to believe the propaganda. She could still be jailed under the new censorship laws, but lawyer Anton Gushinsky told Tova O'Brien she's a courageous woman.
There's a poem that Anton's quoting that a Russian woman can stop a galloping horse and walk into a burning building.
Meanwhile, there are reports an art school in the Ukrainian city of Mariupol has been targeted with 400 people inside. But Democracy Project's Jeffrey Miller told Rachel Smalley that Russia is struggling to make advances.
They're resorting now to this indiscriminate bombing of civilian targets, but they've failed to gain any territory to any large extent.
This is Today FM News.
Good morning, I'm Carly Flynn at 7. The lawyer of a Russian anti-war journalist is worried his client's mental health is deteriorating. Marina Ozyanikova was fined for holding a sign on live TV protesting the Ukraine invasion. She could still be jailed, and lawyer Anton Gushinsky told Tova O'Brien she's stressed. His words are translated.
She's also concerned about her children, especially her oldest son. He is not fully supporting of her actions.
You can catch the full exclusive interview with Tova shortly. Meanwhile, the US believes Beijing is open to providing Russia with military and financial assistance. Democracy Project's Jeffrey Miller told Rachel Smalley tensions are high.
The problem for Xi, and from the Chinese perspective, is if Putin fails, that will trigger unrest in Russia, and these sanctions probably already will.